Gratifying to see a full house. So our next guest probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. He's asked me to cut short his resume. It is so extensive, I had to cut a significant amount on his achievements off, but I'll be brief. So, Trinity College Dublin awarded PhD Structure, Conduct and Performance in Irish Banking, was an economist, consultant Central Bank of Ireland, nominated to attend the IMF Institute in Washington DC, was economic advisor to the Department of Industry and Commerce, professor of banking and financial services at University of Ulster, professor of banking and finance in the Michael Smurfit Graduate School of Business, and in more recent times published, researched, and broadcast extensively in the fields of banking, financial services, including regulation, governance and ethics. And his most recent book, which comes out at the end of this month, Trigonomics, Austerity, Autonomy, Existential Crisis in the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Professor Ray Kinsella.
First thing I want to say, it's a genuine pleasure to be here on a platform and sharing the platform with Dr. Ray Bassett and my good friend Paddy Manning. I have huge respect for them both, and it's just so good to be here with them. Secondly, I'm speaking as I've no political affiliations. I'm speaking as an independent economist, just to share some ideas that may be relevant to the times that are in it. Okay, our starting point, I think, is this. Official Ireland has made the European Union the custodian of our national interests and the trustee of the aspirations of our people. It has very largely ceded to the EU responsibilities for Brexit negotiations and our future relationship with the UK, our nearest neighbour and our largest single country trading partner. For a country with such a distinctive cultural heritage, going back thousands of years, of which attained its independence less than 100 years ago, to cede those responsibilities is a very big deal. In a globalised and interdependent world, and all the good stuff of trading with each other and different types of cooperation, I mean, they're important, they're really important in trade, because they're not just about welfare, but about the affirmation of who we are and what we can contribute as a nation. But reflect on this. Who exactly are we ceding responsibility to? What kind of ideological mindset and governance is it that we're transferring our aspirations, our identity as a nation, our hopes, the future of our kids? Who are we transferring this to, and why? The foundational vision of Europe, and I think it's important to say this, this is not about negativity. It's not about negativity. It's important to recognise the foundational vision of Europe and what its accomplishments are, and the good people who have worked to make it happen. But what's clear to me and to colleagues with whom I've worked, many of whom you know, is that there have been structural and operational deficiencies that have become increasingly evident in recent years. And these deficiencies, and I've mentioned in particular the great Anthony Cochrane, and I'm so pleased to see his book outside because Anthony really has been a pioneer. What we're looking at are imbalances in the way Europe's developed, inequalities from the north to the south, and I'll come back to that, and asymmetries, burden of adjustment to difficult times and how unevenly that's been spread. And I've argued that there was a compelling case for exit. I said it in 2013. In 2014 I suggested that Britain would leave by 2017. I was out for a year, but even so, and that we needed to look to our own interests in that situation. And of course, last August, I set out the case very fully in the Irish Times about why I thought, look, we really got to talk about, exit. But I would like to say that in making the main point, which is that, and I'll talk about it later, Europe has changed. We need to recognise that so have we. And in the discussions that will be here later today, a degree of humility is always a good thing in economics. It keeps you grounded. Let me say this. The unified stance on Brexit in Europe reflects or covers over really a divided Europe. A divided north to south, east to west, divided in terms of equalities and governance. And it's been held in check by what I believe is a grievous fallacy, looking at all of the stuff going on about the Brexit negotiations. And it's this: if you ease up, if you're not repressive, then they'll all be doing it. That's the kind of mindset that there is in Europe, and it does no favours to Europe or to the need for cooperation in our times. And my colleagues will speak later of hard Brexits and soft Brexits, and Norwegian deals and backstops and all the rest of it. But the key point I want to emphasise here is this. In my view, Britain is leaving not Europe, it's leaving what Europe has become. And what Europe has become is a hegemonistic and increasingly militarized political behemoth. And that really worries me. The increased emphasis on militarization, and it should worry everybody here. It's become hegemonistic, it's become militarized, it's largely controlled by Germany and to a greater extent by the Franco-German axis. This Europe is not a community. It's discarded its foundation of Christian democratic roots that were at the heart of the European project. It's bound together by an oppressive dependency on the centre. Even the largest countries, other than those at the centre, play in the reserves. So the risks of trading the approval of this particular Europe for the sovereignty and long-term interests of Ireland, our country, are enormous. Let me just say why and what kind of Europe I'm talking about. When I was a callow young economist, just knocking on the door of the central bank, which we joined in '72, I remember the excitement. I remember the real excitement and the positivity. That changed. It changed by the late 70s and the early 1980s. There was a shift in the ideology of what's called the West. And yeah, it'll take a minute of this, but I think it's really important. If you want to go somewhere, you really need to know where you've come from and what has impelled you to move in that direction. Oh, in the, what would be 78, the great Alexander Solzhenitsyn stood in the Assembly Hall at Harvard University giving the commencement address. And even later, the greatness of that man, his prophetic vision, and what he went through in the gulags, and what he gave testimony of. In his address, he reflected on Europe and where Europe's thinking and governance and values had come from. And the big point he made